when I got involved in studying all about this, I realized that it's much more than just the physical part. Because yes, it causes inflammation. It's full of chemicals and antibiotics and every other bloody thing you can imagine. But we're killing something. And even if that something is treated well until its throat is cut, its throat is still cut and it still feels fear and it still emits hormones and chemicals that end up in the meat that you eat.
Are you ready to live the life you deserve? Do you want to feel vibrantly healthy and reach your optimal weight without dieting while being kind to animals and the planet? Then you're in the right place at the right time. Welcome to Plant-Based Eating for Health with your host, certified plant-based nutritionist, Kathleen Gage.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Kathleen Gage with Plant-Based Eating for Health, and I am really excited today to interview Kate Kunkel. And Kate actually lives where a very dear friend of mine lives, and it's one of those places that if you live there, you probably know everybody who lives there, and it's Ecuador. And when I heard that Kate lives in Ecuador, it's like, hey, do you know my publisher and my friend, Lynn Klippel? And it's like, oh, yeah, I know Lynn. And so small world, small family. And that's really what we're going to talk about today is the small world and the small family and the enlarging family of plant-based eating. And Kate actually has a book called The No-Nonsense Guide to Saving Your Brain, and it's all about eating plant-based. So with that, Kate, great to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. I was so excited when I heard about your podcast for vegans, because I've been beating this drum a long time, and it's really, really good to see it coming out more and more.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting because I've been plant-based for nearly 2 years now, and it was as a result of the lockdown with COVID that I really sat with myself and thought, okay, if this were my last year on earth, what would I be doing? And there were things that I was doing in business that I would no longer be doing. And there were things that I wasn't doing that I would be. And plant-based eating, education and awareness is one of them. So I'm thrilled to have you here and would love to start out with, how did you decide to go plant-based? When did you go plant-based? Give us a little backstory.
Sure. So back in 1989, I owned of all things, and I don't do hair, I owned a hair salon in Palm Desert, California. We were the first salon to go with this is 1989, no animal testing, no chemicals. It was all just washing hair and that sort of thing. We were very strict about it. We used a brand of products that we could buy by the gallon, and people would buy the products and we would refill. I mean, we were like totally about looking after the planet. And as a result of doing all of that, I started getting material from PETA. And one of the brochures was from PETA was of a downer cow, they call them. And my heart broke a million times over. I grew up on farms. I knew what it meant to butcher animals and to eat them. But to see how they were being treated now, it was very different in 1989. And it's even gotten worse since then, of course. But that sort of did it for me. And I went completely vegan like that overnight. I just stopped everything. Unfortunately, back then we didn't have the education that we have now. Now we have access to recipes and meal plans and coaches and everything. That wasn't around, at least that I could find back then. So, I got really sick and I kind of veered away from it. We moved to Las Vegas. I'm a harpist as well. So we moved to Las Vegas and we started working there, and it's really hard to be vegan in Las Vegas, especially in 1993 and 94. So I did veer away from it. But then when we moved to Ecuador, that just got me, seeing things hanging in the markets, being so close to, that was it. No more, no mas. I can't even go there. And I tell you what, I've lost 40 pounds. I'm 62 years old. I feel like better than I did at 32. And I can run circles around all the people I know, and a lot of them are a lot younger than me. So I figure I'm doing something right. And then, so that's how I got started.
I love it. And I just turned 66 and I can literally run circles around people. I run and I'm a slow runner though. You know, it's like the first marathon I participated in, I was 60 and somebody said, are you going to win? And it's like, oh my gosh, if I cross the finish line, I'll be happy.
Won.
It's like, and I was the last one in. So truly I am a slow runner. But you know, it's interesting because I too released a lot of weight after I went plant-based, and I had given up on the diets because I've been a yo-yo dieter all my life. And I did it because of inflammation. I was having severe inflammation, and everything I studied indicated that a plant-based diet would be the way. But what's interesting, I had the same visceral response around the animals and the pictures. And as I started researching plant-based eating, I realized how out of alignment I was with the fact that I rescue animals. We have a lot of rescued animals on our property: horses, dogs, cat. We used to have a ferret. We had a goat. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And yet I was eating animals. So talk to us about the energy of what somebody goes through when, one, they're consuming meat, and two, when they really come to that realization like you did of like, oh, I can't do this.
Well, I think a lot of it is on a very spiritual level. As I help people keep their brains. So my whole purpose in life after my mom died of Alzheimer's, I'm on a mission to get people healthy so that nobody else ever has to do that. I mean, it should be a rare disease. And I truly believe that a big part of the disease is from eating animal products. And part of it is the physical. Absolutely, the physical. It causes inflammation. Dairy and diabetes are very much intertwined, and you don't hear about that in the major media. You don't hear that when they say how to look after yourself. They say, oh, eat protein, but it's the worst kind of protein you can have. Anyway, when I got involved in studying all about this, I realized that it's much more than just the physical part. Because yes, it causes inflammation. It's full of chemicals and antibiotics and every other bloody thing you can imagine. But we're killing something. And even if that something is treated well until its throat is cut, its throat is still cut and it still feels fear, and it still emits hormones and chemicals that end up in the meat that you eat. And bottom line is, we don't need that. It's bad for our own chemistry. It's bad for the planet. It's bad for a zillion things. So, you know, I firmly believe that whatever we put in, we become. We are what we eat, 100%. So if you're going to eat something that's just gone through trauma and fear, you're going to have trauma and fear. And trauma and fear are going to affect your heart and your brain and your mind.
I am so glad to hear you say that, because as I look at the state of the world today with all the trauma, the fear, the anxiety, the hate, the abuse, it makes sense that people are responding like that, because energetically they're putting this dead energy and this just fearful energy into their body. And I was listening to I actually found the documentary, A Prayer for Compassion. And I'm encouraging people to watch that, because they interviewed Victoria Moran. And actually she was one of the producers of the film. And she talked about how she had heard about factory farming. She knew that factory farming was a bad thing, but it was the day that she was actually at a compassionate farm that by the third cow that was going up for slaughter, the first two, they just went up and they trusted the people who had raised them. And it was like, oh, we're going for treats and whatever they were going for. By the third cow, she said the cow literally dug its heels in and would not move. And the person who was going to slaughter the cow whistled, and it was a familiar whistle, as if they were whistling to their dog. The cow was like, oh, okay, went up the ramp and had its throat slit. And she said that one experience showed her how traumatic it can be for an animal, that here they were trusting, and yet the very person they trusted betrayed them. I would love to talk more about the energy of food, because I've really started tapping into that. I've been on a spiritual quest and a spiritual journey for well over 40 years. I mean, I've meditated on pyramids. I've been to Egypt. I've been to Israel. I've been to Mexico. And so the quest for spiritual enlightenment has been one that I've had for many years. And I think the most spiritual thing I've ever done in my life is to release the desire to have animal-based products in my body. And I really am committed to helping people to understand that on a deeper level. So let's dig deeper into the whole energy and spiritual side of releasing a animal-based diet.
Well, firstly, just doing it by not consuming that, by not having that energy around you. Of course, it's around us anyway, right? I mean, you have to, most of us you go to the supermarket, it's there. I cannot walk by the meat department. I can't do it. My heart just hurts. And that's been that way a very long time, since 1989 when I first learned what was going on. I have to share this story because it's the perfect spiritual kind of segue. When I was a kid, my grandfather raised pigs, and the sow had 8 or 9 babies, and one of them was born with its insides outside. So my grandmother brought the little piglet in and put this in the outsides back in, and we raised this little pig. This is back in the time of Green Acres. So of course we named the little piglet Arnold. Arnold and my grandmother and I had such a connection. So I've never been able to eat pork since Arnold, but that was one of the most incredible experiences. This little creature and he was rejected by his mother, of course. So we had to feed him. We nurtured him, brought him up, and then he grew to be very large, like 600 pounds. And my grandpa says, we can't do this. We can't keep feeding this pig. It was a little small farm. And so they were going to take Arnold on the truck to take him to get murdered. And my cousins and I were hanging off my grandfather's arms, screaming and yelling, "Don't take Arnold, don't take Arnold, you're killing Arnold." And we were just freaking out. And I think now of my grandfather, and he struggled because he was a very kind, compassionate man. His animals got treated so well until that moment, like you said, a compassionate farm. But his heart, our hearts, the pig's heart, that whole circle has stayed with me for 52 years. I was 10 years old when that happened. It has stayed with me. The energy, I think of that pig every time somebody has a bacon sandwich around me. I can't, And we are connected. We're all connected with everybody, right? Even people on the other side of the world. We're attached to the people, the ants, plants, ants. I have a zillion ants here. I've really got them on the brain. But we're all connected, and you can't get away from that. Even if you try to ignore it, even if you think it's perfectly okay to eat Arnold, it's not, because we're connected.
Oh, we absolutely are. And I would love, first of all, for you to tell people more about your book and how do they find you? Let's start with how people find you. What's your web address?
Oh, it's katekunkel.com. Just very easy. Kate Kunkel, KUNKEL.com, katekunkel.com. And I have a blog on there. My blog is all dedicated to how to eat, how to exercise, how to help your sleep patterns, because it's all to prevent dementia and Alzheimer's. It's the same as preventing heart disease. It's the same as preventing cancer. We have to look after our bodies, the temples that they are. And part of that is by not polluting them with negative energy, because a big part of the book actually is about spirituality and compassion, because without that, there's a part of our brain that is missing. There's a part of our thought it's missing without compassion. So that's a big deal in the book, spirituality and compassion and generosity. We have to help each other. So anyway, I write about that in the blog. That's a big part of what I'm offering right now. So people can just go to katekunkel.com. The blog is right there on the first page. You can go and read all about the things that I suggest to people, the steps to take. And also I have a little freebie. It's also on the front page. It's 5 steps you can take right now to look after yourself. And you know what? It starts way before 50. It starts way before 40.
It does.
We have to look after our brains as soon as we think about it, because the brain cells, we don't grow that many more after the age of 3. After that, it's basically all downhill. So we have to look after what we have. There is such a thing as neurogenesis, but the most important thing for us is neuroplasticity, meaning that we are making the best use and rerouting the cells in our brain, the neurons, the synapses, to adapt to things. Part of that is learning new things. Even learning about veganism, learning about anything helps that you've never dealt with before, helps with your brain. Being compassionate, no dairy, no dairy. People say it's okay, that nobody's dying. Yes, they are. Baby cows are dying because of us taking mama's milk.
What we're really up against are the millions upon millions, if not billions of dollars that have been invested in the promotions and advertising to convince people that animal-based products are good for them. And it shocks me when I hear people say that, they've got to have X amount of protein. You can look around and you can see the demise of people's health, and it's like connect the dots. I did a Facebook post the other day about COVID-19, and I said, it would be really nice if, along with the stats that they give, they also give the underlying causes. And they look at how many people actually were they set themselves up for complications due to what they were eating. And I had this one man who said, "Oh, that's ridiculous, Kathleen, because people aren't going to take responsibility for how they eat and how they exercise." And I'm like, that makes no sense whatsoever. People would rather subject themselves to the masks and the hand washing and the social distancing and losing business and all of that rather than giving up animal-based products. So where do you see the whole movement of plant-based eating and veganism going in the future?
I'm hopeful because I just got my certification as a vegan nutritionist, and I'm working.
Was that through eCornell?
Yes.
I got mine about 3 months ago. Got mine.
And then I'm working on vegan health coaching, and I'm starting a program. It's the beta version of my program starting in July to help people. And I've had so much interest. So it'll be like a program based on the book. So people can join, and we'll do cooking, we'll do all that sort of thing. And the interest has been really great in taking this program. And we'll learn, because a lot of people don't know how to cook. Kathleen, I can't believe it, how many people don't know how to cook. So even in this program, we're going to do basic cooking stuff so that people who want to look after themselves have the skills. It's amazing how many people, even my age, and I figured everybody my age at least knew how to cook something, but it's not true. A lot of people have just depended on produced, packaged things. By the way, don't eat anything out of a package. I don't know how to stress that strongly enough. Stay away from packages. But a lot of people depend on my sister. Boy, do we have interesting conversations about her package, because she thinks she's vegan as well, but she eats things out of a package. So you don't really know what's in there, and it's dead. But I think more and more people, I see it in the interest in my blog. I see it in the interest in the book and in the program, and just talking to people. Like a good friend of mine here in Salinas, Ecuador, she's been a big beef eater all her life. And of course, here on the coast, the beef isn't all that good anyway, which is a good thing because she's sort of veering away from it. And I'm nudging her. Because you have to be careful, right? Whenever you're trying to convince somebody of something, don't push, because they'll push back a lot harder. So we've been talking, and I've been teaching her how to cook, and we're doing all that sort of thing. And even she, the big beef eater, she's getting closer and closer to saying, okay, I'm done. Little tidbits, because she's also into the animal, saving the animals. But I just have to get her to understand that the animals on her plate are the same as the animals.
Oh, that's a big one. It's like, I had that disconnect for 64 years. I mean, it's like I really didn't connect the dots. And even, and that's what boggles my mind about me, how long it took me. And so I have to be compassionate and understand that it's going to take other people equally as long to, hopefully not as long. But how would you have a conversation if somebody said, okay, I'm willing to give it a try? What would be your initial conversation with somebody?
The first thing I would say is if you're willing to give it a try, let's talk about what your goals are for why you want to do this. What's the point? So, because you have to really have a point for anything you're doing. Otherwise, you're not going to stick with it, right? So we set up some kind of a goal. So if and I talk to people about this all the time. Is it because you don't want to eat animals, or is it because of you? What's the reason for you wanting to try this? And then we go through that. If it's for your health, then I've got a gazillion things that I can offer them to help them eat well, healthy, amazing food without any animal products. So we go through that, Then, but if it's about the animals, then we talk about, okay, it's great to be compassionate for the animals. Is that going to sustain you when your best buddy wants to go out for dinner and you go to a place and all they have is hamburgers? Is that going to sustain you? How are you going to deal with that? So then we talk about that. And those are the things you have to think about as you enter this lifestyle. Okay,
Right.
how am I going to deal with that? I can't just live on French fries and salads, because that's why I got sick in 1989, because I didn't have the options and I didn't have the knowledge. So I got really sick because I thought that living on salads and baked potatoes was okay because it was vegan, but it's not okay. You have to think about all of that when you're deciding to do that for yourself or for the animals. You really have to think about all those things. So if somebody came to me just now and said, I'd like to go vegan because I really feel bad for the animals, we would have a conversation about how they're going to deal with that in the long term. What does that mean to you? Do you understand what that means? Because it does mean a change, right? It means that you're not going to go to a lot of places with your friends, or if you do, you want to eat before and then you go and hang out and have a drink or something.
Right, right. Well, give an example to somebody who's brand new to this, what are some of the staple foods that they could have in their pantry, in their kitchen, in their refrigerator, so that they're not setting themselves up for failure. They're actually setting themselves up. And I love the fact that you use the word lifestyle, because this is a lifestyle. It's, I quit drinking 36 years ago because I fell down a lot. It made me very socially unacceptable. And I treat eating meat the same way I do taking a drink. It's like, I just don't do it. It's period, end of story. And, so there are people that really want to do this, but they're not quite sure, how will I have a balanced diet?
Right. So I always say, okay, think of all of the things that are dried. So we have beans, we have like even the green peas, you can buy those. I eat a lot of garbanzo beans, black beans. Mm-hmm. Garbanzo beans are amazing.
I love them.
Yeah. Rice, if you can make sure that it doesn't get processed where there are places with gluten, because I steer people away from wheat and grains because of the inflammatory effects of it. So I steer people away from that. But any kind of like yucca flour, of course, being here in Ecuador, the yucca flour is amazing. You call it tapioca flour in North America, but it makes amazing substitute. Like you can make stuff instead of bread, like instead of wheat bread, you can make these amazing buchines and pan de yuca, all of these things from yucca flour, and it's highly nutritious, that sort of thing. So that's in the dried section. In your fridge, anything that's green and leafy, number one, but it's really important, people. I can't stress it enough. Organic, because when we're ingesting all of this, the more vegetables we eat, the more the chance of getting toxic overload from the fruits and vegetables. I know it's expensive in North America. I only left 2.5 years ago, so I know how expensive it is, but it's worth it in the long run. If you're going to fill up your fridge with everything that's colorful, just go to the produce section and buy everything that's different colors, put it in your fridge, and then you can mix it up with those beans and the quinoa and you can mix and match. The possibilities are endless. Oh, and good spices, turmeric and pepper and ginger and garam masala, of course, curry, garam masala, all of those things, because you can make anything taste freaking amazing with a few spices, some garlic, gotta have garlic, because that's also very good for inflammation, yeah? Garlic and onions, those are two very important staples to have. Anything green, anything leafy, the cruciferous vegetables, and carrots. I mean, I've heard a lot of people who do the keto thing saying, oh, I can't have carrots, too much sugar, but that is not right. Eat carrots, they're good for you. They're good for you. Spinach, Popeye was right. Spinach is very good for you. But the staples, you want to have if you can be sure your rice is going to be gluten-free, brown, whole. Don't eat anything white. Yeah, stay away from white. And that includes white potatoes. I mean, they're okay, but it's better to have sweet potatoes.
Right.
It's better. Stay away from anything white. That's kind of my rule of thumb.
Now, in your book, do you have a section on plant-based eating? Do you have a section on, here are the foods, or do you have that available on your website? I
have in the book and in the program, I've got meal plans
Okay, great.
And I've got recipes. Some of that are my own. Some are that I've taken from the internet with permission, of course. I've got whole meal plans, shopping lists. So if you say, okay, I've never done this before, I don't even know what to buy. The first week, you start off with a shopping list. All the spices you need, all of the beans and all of that, it's there. That way you've got it, right? And then every week on the meal plans, we've got a shopping list. And then I've got all kinds of suggestions. It's not like you have to eat these things, but I tried to balance it as a nutritionist. I'm also concerned about how much calcium you're getting, how much vitamin B12, because B12 is very important and it's very hard for us to get as vegans. I do take a supplement, by the way, for B12 because I can't get B12 supplemented nutritional yeast here. It's hard to get nutritional yeast at all here, but I can't get it with the B12 supplement. So I do that. And an omega-3 vegan supplement. You do need that. It's very hard for a vegan to get everything that you need without those. That's really about it. If you're eating well, you don't need to have all the supplements. People talk, oh, I need this, I need that. But if you're eating your food that's fresh and healthy and you're cooking it yourself or eating whatever you can raw. Mushrooms. Oh, I forgot mushrooms. Mushrooms are ultimately important for brain health. Incredibly, incredibly nutritious, amazing. And there are so many different kinds. We're a little limited here in what we can buy, but up in North America, man, you can get anything. And you can grow your own. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we actually have a vegetable garden this year, and it's just starting to come of age. And we've got tomatoes, squash. It's amazing. It's amazing. So, how would a family work as a family to help the young people become more plant-based in what they're eating? Because unfortunately, so many young people, like you said, they're used to having food in a box, and that's what they think food is. So how could a family actually start that transition to a more plant-based lifestyle?
It's for me, if it's really little kids, it's easy. Because if that's all they know, that's all they know. Mm-hmm. When they get to be 10, 12 years old, they've got firstly all their friends having all this stuff that you don't want them to have. Have them get involved in the cooking process, in the prep process. If you can have a garden, get them out there with you in the garden. Of course, the younger you start, the better, because they'll be more willing to do it, because teenagers are a little bit more difficult. But if you've got like 8 to 10 to 12-year-old kids, get them involved in the garden. Take them to farmers markets. Make it an adventure. Make it an outing. And then you take those things and bring them home and do something with them. When I have retreats here, we have a retreat center here in Ecuador. And when my guests come, we take them to the mercado. We buy the vegetables. We bring them back and we do them. We have a huge island in my kitchen. It was designed to have groups of people cooking. So we come back, we chop it up, we throw spices in, we have experiments. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not so great, but we can always fix it. But that's what we do. And I think that's a good way to teach anybody to have fun with it. Because cooking, I love cooking. I've always loved cooking since I was a little girl. I had to make dinner for my dad when my mom was working. So I've been cooking since I was 8 years old. So it's always been a joy to me and a lot of fun to experiment. So this is just perfect. And I think if you can make it fun and exciting and a discovery process for kids, even your most reticent teenager is probably going to want to get involved when you can make it taste so awesome.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, in addition to eating healthy, what are some ways that people can improve their brain health?
Exercise, number one, right? Well, I don't know. It's a pretty close tie, exercise and good food, but exercise is absolutely essential. Half an hour a day, get your heart pumping. And then at some point in the week, do something to strengthen your legs, the big muscles in your legs. It's very important. There's some connection between the strength of the muscles in our legs and our brains. Gut health is exceptionally important. Of course, that comes from diet, but that also comes from the stuff that's around you, because our skin is our biggest organ, right? So if there are toxins around us, if there are toxins going on our skin, makeup, if it's the soap you use, if it's the cleaning products, it's very important to watch that. Baking soda works great. Vinegar works great for cleaning, we don't need all those expensive cleaners that smell so bad. So that's another thing, to really be careful about the toxins. Funny enough, hearing loss is a huge contributor to cognitive decline for a couple of reasons. One, we can't hear things well enough to discern things. And so we tune it out and we stop learning. We stop listening. We stop engaging with people. And that's a big deal. Hearing loss. And I see it with my dad, who had a stroke, and he lost some of his hearing due to the stroke. And we've really had to work on him to stay engaged with the hearing loss, even with the hearing aid. So if people do have issues with their hearing, I highly recommend go get it checked. If you have to wear a hearing aid, just bloody well do it. Don't be vain. Just wear the hearing aids because it's very important. Tooth problems. Make sure your teeth are looked after well. That's another common source of infection that people don't realize that can go right to the brain. It's a big, it has a big impact on the brain. Exercise, sleep. But everybody needs good sleep, and not just a long time. You need to go through all the cycles. You should go through 7 of those or 5 of those cycles a night. So it's important to get good sleep. If you're not getting good sleep, go find out why. Like if you have to, do you have, sleep apnea? If you've got that, then go and have it looked after. Get one of those CPAP machines. Whatever you have to do, make sure you're lighting all the stuff with the bedrooms. Cool, no light. Turn off the screens. At least 3 hours before you go to bed. All that blue light, we can't do that. And the other thing that I'm really stressing is to get in the sun. Most people in North America and Europe are vitamin D deficient. We've been told this pack of lies that by going out in the sun, we're going to get skin cancer and we're going to die. It's a load of crap, people. Just get out in the sun. No, you don't want to get burned. You don't want to have damage. I probably have some damage because I'm out here all the time working in the garden and cleaning the pool and stuff, but don't be afraid of the sun. The sun is our friend. It has the whole range of light that we need for our health. That includes ultraviolet and that includes infrared. And infrared is very important for the brain. So get outside. If you're going to do your run, well, you're doing it. You're running outside. On a treadmill. If that's what you have to do because there's 3 feet of snow, that's great. But get outside if you can, no matter what you do. Those are.
I feel like I accomplished a lot of those.
You did.
Today. That's awesome with my 4 miles and, took my dog for 3 of the 4. So, and this is Kathleen Gage with Plant-Based Eating for Health. And I'm talking with Kate Kunkel, who is the author of the No Nonsense Guide to Saving Your Brain. What have you noticed with the people that you've worked with, and you do, you coach people on their nutrition, and you have retreats, and you've got your book. What have been some of the most profound experiences that you've seen from people making the change?
Yeah, it's the inflammation. You were talking about inflammation. It's a huge thing. People don't even realize that that's such a big problem. A lot of it is from dairy. Dairy is probably one of the biggest contributors to the inflammation itself. But to see people going from their rings being wrapped around, their flesh being wrapped around their wedding ring because they're so inflamed, not because they're heavy, but because they're inflamed. Those are the things that I've seen in ankles and wrists. It's almost like, and elbows. People with rheumatoid arthritis, that's a huge deal to get off the dairy and the meat because those are things that really exacerbate the rheumatoid response. And that has been one of the coolest things to see. People thinking, and they can bend, they can bend joints because they're not inflamed and in so much pain. Exactly. Yeah, that's why if I was going to say to someone who was struggling with diabetes or inflammation or something like that, I would say the same thing like you did. 2 weeks, just try it, because in 2 weeks, if you really do cut it all out, you will feel different. You will not have that swelling and that pain.
Oh, I noticed a difference in 2 days. It was shocking. It was like, okay, this is kind of bizarre. And so I tried it for a week and I dropped like 7 pounds, and I'm like, okay, this is crazy because I wasn't dieting. And then after a week, I had other improvements. And after 2 weeks, it's like, okay, I've got to keep going. And that was nearly 2 years ago. So in closing, Kate, what are your final thoughts for people? What can you give them as a takeaway that will help them on their journey of being more spiritual around the way they eat, more conscious around the way they eat, and kinder to the animals?
Well, I would say think of, if you have pets, just think of all of the world's animals as your pets. Could you stand to take, like I have many rescue animals too, could you stand to take one of those and slit its throat? Because our hearts are connected to those creatures. Our souls are connected to them. I remember Daniel Brinkley once talking about his near-death experience, and he was talking about being on the other side, and that this goat was caught in this fence, and this man was beating this goat, and that the man at the end of his life, he would have to feel what that goat felt going through his life review. And I've thought of that often. Do people that get pleasure out of this, out of murdering animals, do they have to do a life review? Is that, if that's the case, that's a reason enough for me to be nice.
Absolutely.
I don't want to have that on my shoulders.
Absolutely.
On the other side.
Oh my goodness. Well, Kate, it's been delightful. I've been talking with Kate Kunkel, who is the author of The No Nonsense Guide to Saving Your Brain. And I would assume that's available on Amazon.
It's going to be like, I'm just doing the second edit now, so it'll be a little while, but you can go onto my website, get all the information from the blog. And if you sign up for that, there's 5 steps you can do right now. I'll make sure to let you know when the book's out.
Awesome. Well, Kate, it's been delightful. And I'm so thrilled that you're out there raising awareness around plant-based eating, the vegan lifestyle. And I just really appreciate all you're doing. Say hi to Lynn when you see her. And I plan to come to Ecuador and visit both of you.
You better. Okay. Thanks so much, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Thank you for your commitment to an ethical life through plant-based food choices. The kind of choices that are kind to your body, the environment, and most of all, animals. Be sure to leave a review and rating of the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show.